So welcome everybody to February 3rd's Ortelius Architecture meeting. Let me share my screen. And if I can get rid of Zoom. Okay, so actually a lot has happened in the last couple weeks. So I've had a couple discussions with Utkarsh about doing a 3D graph. Let me show you what we're and if anybody's interested in helping him out, let me know and we can get you hooked up with that part of it. It's going to be there's going to be a front end piece and a back end piece. So we're actually going to implement this 3D graphing, if I can find it. It's going to be like this one. So what we're going to do here is across one axis is going to be your application versions. And then the vertical axis will be the number of component revisions. So like this green column here will be like the shopping cart service. And then the next row would be like the red ones would be the payment service. And what we'll do is, so each column, each row here will be a service and how many versions of that service over time as we go through the deployments process. And then each one will have its own, each component version will have its own row as part of that process. So what it'll show us is, if you look at it kind of like from this point of view, is which services are changing and which ones aren't changing as part of your progression through time for how things are changing. So what I've always said is between 15 and 20% of your code of your services will be what I call active or changing frequently. And then the other 80–90% of your code base after it gets rolled out is going to stabilize. And this kind of 3D graph is going to be representing that. So what we're going to need to do is the front end JavaScript for doing with the layout here, as well as a new backend microservice in Python. So to grab the data. If you're interested, let me know and I'll get you hooked up and I can dive into deeper on that front. So that's going to be happening. We do have the hierarchical edge bundle that is kind of in place. We're just going to need to get some data into it so we can kind of show the nice story at this level. What this one is the ability to show relationships, a lot of relationships between the different services. So this is showing the relationships between all of Java classes and how one class calls a method in another class. So this will map out the same way with services. And this will render at the application version level as well. So that one's in place, but we need to get some good data behind it on that aspect. Other things that I've in the last couple of weeks is there's another open source project called kubesec.io that they will go out and scan a Kubernetes cluster and tell you where all your vulnerabilities are. They'll do it at all different levels. And on that front, they have a way to scan the cluster and kick out a JSON file that we can actually bring in at that level. So that may be something that we want to look at as well. And this will allow us to mirror up data from running environments to the microservices and the application that are in those environments. And some of the things like that I'll find is whether you have like a rooted container, so you have a security vulnerability in a container that you're running. Maybe you have some RBAC messed up for a particular pod or something like that. So that's something that we can actually look at. There's a lot of data there that we may need to do some investigation on, and which pieces we want to pull out of there. Same thing with Aspen Mesh. I've been talking to them this past couple of weeks, and they're basically a commercial version of Istio. And with that, they can report on the security and the routes. Crum, this is similar to the open telemetry that you looked at. That we could probably start looking at a way to start bringing in that telemetry data as well. Another one that folks are looking for is kind of value stream. And this one's like, let me scroll here. Time from git commit to deployment, and like number of deployments. If I can type here. Those types of value stream data, number of rollbacks. That type of value stream, a lot of it's going to come from a mix between the Git, what's coming out of the development side, and where it's being hit on the deployment side. So kind of matching up the data on that front. If anybody wants like a little simple project, what we need is we need the git command to figure out the timestamp for a commit. So if anybody has any time to poke around with git commands, so given any commit, we basically need to know what the timestamp is for that commit as part of that process. Again, we have the cookie cutter. This is kind of on the front end of the services when we can have somebody register a service, and then in the background we go out and create the Jenkins files, the Git repo, kind of helping onboard projects into a new microservice world. And then there's one other thing on the data. I'll think of it here. We'll get to that. We need to work on the dashboard or our reporting for this data. So let me go wrap up these other things. I'm going to be working with Sergio to clean up the issues and get that kind of going. And also last time we talked about the code pairing sessions. I did talk to Brad McCoy down in Australia with that working group, and they're on board as well to start doing those. First thing we need to do is get the issues cleaned up, and then go ahead and start tackling the co-coding pairing sessions. And then we have some testing. So this is our test cases are written in Java. So if you're interested in helping automate the test cases, you can work with Pujara, and he can get you going on that front on how to set up the automated testing. So that's kind of what I had on the list. Let me bring up the UI here and kind of show you what I'm kind of running into from a design perspective. Okay. Now if you're loading up there. So we may have a service down in the back end here. So one of the things that we have is like the value stream. So the value stream, we kind of want to show like a compliance scorecard of, you know, where things are at the from a compliance perspective for an application. So what I was kind of thinking was right now we have kind of like a list view of the, oh, I know why that's because I logged in the wrong ID. So we have all the, you know, the version, the domain, you know, all that information. And what I'm thinking for like a value stream, because a value stream is going to be kind of, this is where it gets hard because it's tied to an application base version and not necessarily like an application version. So things like the hierarchical edge bundle would be viewed over for a particular version of of an application, but things like the 3D chart, the value stream data, you know, the compliance scorecard is going to be at the application base version as part of that. So I'm not sure if we should do a reporting tab over here or if we just rework and add like in a new menu item here to kind of change the view to give that that data. Like when we bring up this, this data will be launched into a new page as part of the implementation. So we're not going to embed it into here. So just want to get everybody's thoughts on that, some ideas and how we can kind of navigate to this to this data that we're starting to gather. And then of course we'll have Arvin's ML and his data coming in as well. That will be at a higher level when we start looking at that, and that'll probably be at a application based version as well, is what I'm thinking. So just gonna open it up to everybody and just toss your ideas out. You guys are quiet.
Sorry, I joined late, so I'm a little behind.
So just to bring you up to speed, Ukarsh is going to start working on our 3D graph. So what this will be is given an application-based version, each row here, like this green set of columns will be a component or a component, and then as it goes over time. So in what we'll end up with is we'll be able to show that, let's say this is the blues, the cart service. The cart service has only had 2 updates over time where the maybe shipping is getting updated all the time.
Okay, that's kind of cool. It's a cool 3-dimensional graph.
Yeah, so it's going to be each like basically row is going to be a component, and then the height is going to be the number of component versions, and this is going to be the number of deployments over time based on the application. Either an application or it'll probably be from the base app, the base version. So this would be like version, this would be like the 0 would be the base version, 2 would be version 2, 4, etc. So when we have this type of data that's going to be kind of tied to the application version, I mean, the application, where do we put that and kind of navigate to it? And that's where I'm kind of hung up.
Steve, I pinged a command to get the timestamp of a commit in the chat.
What was that?
I have pinged you the command to get the timestamp of a git commit.
Oh, cool. Did you ping it in Discord or?
Just right here. I'm on a different machine, not on
Oh,
this
okay.
call.
Let
You can copy that.
me grab it real quick before I lose it.
Right. Just tested it in my environment, in my machine as well, working fine.
Perfect. Cool.
So I guess the question is, so I think that, for example, on that graph that you just showed, that has to do with components, right? And the changes in components.
This graph is going to be, you can kind of envision this from looking at an application in whole. So not just
So
the
it's at
base
the
version.
application level.
Right.
So why wouldn't we just add, go to back to Ortelius? Why would we go, if we're looking at the application at the whole, wouldn't we keep it for every, we'd have to keep it for every version of the application, right?
No, just the base version. Because
Well, then I would say still
because each one of these is going to be, the way you calculate the differences is based on the comparing version 1 of the application to version 2, version 2 to version 3 of the application, version 4, so that's where you get figure out the differences in the components.
Yeah, so I had a question from somebody that I was chatting with about having, so for example, we have all of this listed in one big list and they didn't think it was that useful. What they thought is that you would have just in the list, you would just have the base component. And once you went to the base component, it would have all the information, including a list within that of the different versions of the component that you could select into. So you would have the high level component information.
Or a component or application.
I'm sorry, application. You'd have in the case that he was talking about components. Right. What he was asking for, if you go to let me just show you from a component.
All right. Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, you can keep sharing. I was just gonna walk you through what he. Now this may have been that I was having. It was the day we were having some trouble, and I couldn't show him a clear list from the component view. So he wanted to go to the component, and then it'll make sense for an application, I think.
All right, let me log out real quick and. Let me just get to where I'm not chugging through the whole database.
His point was, this list is going to be too long. And I said, well, we can filter it.
Well, that's what we're running into in general, is when you start collecting this history, especially when you're in a CI/CD pipeline. Yeah,
that's what he said. He goes, you're going to have too much. There's too much data in here. And then that's why I said, well, you can filter it. He suggested for usability, that it would be easier to conceptualize it if you only showed the base component to select. And then once you went into the base component, you might have a sub list, or you would have, so go back to, so what he thought was.
I think he's on a call. It was that,
maybe. Don't remember who it was, but if it
was it Bassam or somebody else?
Bassam, it may have been, but I think it might have been somebody else.
Okay.
And
Bassam, you're on the hook now.
Pratik, I'm so happy to see that you're here. Everybody's been bugging you, and I told everybody about this awesome person we had that do microservices in the wild. Okay, so click on the cart service or the ad service.
The base version or
the base version. So he thought that everything in this list should just be the base version and not the iterations. And
Okay.
then his point was, for the most part, isn't all this data redundant for each one? And I said, well, the upper two squares are, but not necessarily the README, the Swagger, and all of that.
Yeah, and this will actually change. So if we go into another component.
Well, anyway, so he thought we should have anything that's static or associated at all of them to be in one area. And then you could select from a list which version you want to see, and it shows the changes. So if we did that, we could put if we did something similar at the application level, then we could add the graph at the common level.
Right.
So in other words, he wanted a full common level on the top. And then underneath that, he wanted a list of what he could select. And then once we select that list, everything below that is unique to that version.
Right. So the only thing that would be consistent would be this top part.
Then maybe we have to make a form and get that value to create the list of graphs.
Right. Kind of have another.
Why would would this stuff down below be different for a particular version?
Yeah, you can update the README between versions.
No, I know. I'm not talking about the README. I'm talking about the full domain name. The name would change based on the version, the description.
But yeah, so it'd be mostly this. The full domain would probably stay the same.
The build ID, the build number
this stuff would be the same. The name, the build ID, your container registry. The container registry maybe not change, but it has the potential to change.
But if it changed, it would change for everything.
Right, but you want to know from if we switch from Docker Hub to Quay halfway through our components, it's not going to be the same. You know what I mean? You're not going to go back.
Well, we got to go to the 80-20 rule. That's if somebody switches containers at a different version. What you're saying is that it would update it for everything. Now that container is stored in Quay instead of Hub.
Right. So
you wouldn't know in the past that it was stored in Quay or in Docker Hub, whatever.
Right.
What's the bad part about that? Because it's not that important. I don't think, especially if they got the reason why they did it was because they got rid of Docker and now they're moving to Quay.
Right. I mean, it's just one field because the digest is going to be different. The tag, the Helm chart. Well, the Helm chart could be the same. The namespace may change. I've seen that change over time.
Yeah, that could change. That definitely could change.
The chart repo probably won't change.
Well, anyways, that was his suggestion, because he felt that there was a lot of data on here, and he felt that there was some that was redundant. And the other screen, he thought that the list was going to be too big, so it should just be all of the base components, and then you go into the base components, and from there you could look at environments, and you could see it from one view, easily see where all the different versions are installed. And that was what he was actually looking for, because they were struggling with the drift, and he wanted an easy way to see from one component all the different versions of where the versions were installed. And that's when I said, well, you can filter it out, and then you have this list which says parent and environment, and that's where you can see that. And I said you could filter it. He thought it'd be easier for people if it was just displayed to them in a single pane for that, all the data for that one component, instead of having so many versions on this screen.
Okay.
Now, if we did that, then at the application level, we would do something similar, and that graph would be for the application as a whole. That graph would change Wouldn't it? It would change, but it would change to show changes over time.
Right. Yeah, so you'd have,
And then this brings me to the other conversation that we've been having with the discussion around SLOs, because I think people are going to see SLOs based on the higher order, the higher level component. They're going to be tracking SLOs not based on every single version of a component, but the component,
okay, that
right?
makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah. So if we were to add SLOs, we would need to have SLOs tracked at the component, at the kind of like what your graph shows, but the so the SLOs would be for the component as a whole.
yeah. I wonder if we kind of did this. Let me go back into one of these. So at the base version level, we kind of move things around, and whatever, like you said, whatever's common, we'll put into a common area. And then maybe we have a way, like a drop down or some way to filter or search for the version that they want to look
So
at.
he wanted that exact list that we had in the at the component level, the list view. He wanted the filtered version of that list at the component level.
I get that, but
Oh, okay.
if I understand that you want a list. So we come into this screen and we have a list of all the component versions. Then do you click on one of those in the list and then go into the README and the Swagger?
Yeah, so what he thought was at the very top, you would have everything common for that. So it's really clean and there's not a lot of data on the screen. And underneath that, the common information, you have the exact list that we just saw that has the environment, the parent, all that. And it shows all of the different versions. And then when you click on that, it populates the bottom for that.
Got it.
So you could literally, with it from one screen, page through and see the difference between the two instead of going back and forth.
Okay. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, I think that could work for us to load in more of the high level data to be able to represent that.
Yeah, when he said, when he brought it up, I realized that at first I thought it was more clicks, but after I talked to him about it, it was like, okay, yeah, that does make sense, because he's like, what if I just want to go look at the Swagger detail for one and then go to look at the Swagger detail the other? I have to keep going back out, then looking at the list, finding it, and then coming back in.
Right. Now for the compliance scorecard, would you want to see a compliance scorecard across all applications at once, or would it be okay to go into an application and see the compliance scorecard?
I think it should be at the high level, just at the application level, one application at a time.
One application at a time.
Yeah.
We don't think that people are going to need to see like a pretty, box chart with all what's green and what's red, all in
Every
one
application.
View. Yeah, for across everybody.
If so, it probably would be something we just want to add to it. Maybe we're going to have to start a reports or something.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking.
I think that right now, though, if we're going to do some kind of a scorecard like that, we would do it at the application level and then worry about trying to aggregate that information. It's not something people are asking for. There's other things that it's more important. I know that the Texas AG wants something like that compliance scorecard that says how mature that application is. But I feel like right now what's more important is we do something with cookie cutter so that we can encourage the adoption.
Yep. Okay, because if we do the compliance scorecard at the individual application level, that the idea that you're talking about would actually work well at that level. And if we need to roll up later, that we could do that.
Right.
Because the other thing on the roll up that we're going to have is rolling up all the oh, this is the other thing that came up is if I don't know if I have it in the data here, but maybe. So we did the work around gathering the licenses and the CVEs. So here we have what we're dependent upon. So let's say there's a vulnerability in Click. And we want to be able to find all the applications and microservices that are using Click so we can go fix them. How would we want to do that navigation at that level? Because this is like a dependency of this is package dependencies of a microservice. So we kind of need to flip it totally upside down. And that was another, maybe just a reporting thing that we need to do. Or
yeah, I think that we're going to get to a point where we're going to want to have a place for people to generate reports where it's, you know, they have to enter their parameters and it's more like a, you know, they're querying the database.
Yeah. We'll write that over the weekend.
I know, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think that we have other things that we should be worrying about, and that some of the stuff we need to add to the roadmap. And you know, if somebody wants to take it on, they can. But I think that the cookie cutter is probably far more important.
All right. We'll have to figure that part out on as well. If we're gonna for cookie cutter, if we at the component level, if we have a cookie cutter template drop down or something, or how that's going to be utilized.
And why don't you show everybody what cookie cutter is?
It's a it was written in Python, but it spans across multiple languages. So the idea behind it is to create a template process where you can kind of go off and use these templates to go do things in the back. Let's do a search here. So let's see here. Like if we want to do an Android app with Maven.
Steve, are you sharing something?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I stopped sharing. Where'd it go? All right. Zoom.
For making it templates.
Yeah. So let me go back. So the cookie cutter templating project gives us a way to kind of take one of these templates, and it will then go ahead and like here, Fast API for what we use, that it's going to go ahead and if we implement this, that template will in the background go generate a bunch of stuff for us. And with that, it'll give us the ability to help folks kind of bootstrap their projects as part of that process. So this is one of those things that we need to look at to kind of, when somebody registers a service, they could pick what type or which template they want to use. And then we go ahead and get everything up and going for them. And it looks like there's a, it's going to be just a bunch of command line, because it's written in Python, we'll just interact with the command line, grab the information that we need to apply to the template and kind of get going there. So you can see whether like at this level, When I create this fast API template, am I going to connect up to GitLab or GitHub? Am I going to be using Postgres or MySQL as part of that process? Is it going to go out to Kubernetes or not? So that kind of gives all that that base up and going redundant stuff that needs to happen. And then we'll need to add on, I think you could probably combine a couple of these to say you want to add in a Jenkins pipeline, for example, on top of this. So what we'll need to do is kind of figure out how we can take these templates and present those prompts inside of Ortelius to allow people to it's going to be like a kind of like a dynamic form that folks are going to fill out to go ahead and start working with at that level. If this is comparable to Backstage.io, and that may be another way that we may want to look at, is Backstage.io is another open source project in the CNCF. It came out of Spotify, and we could leverage their templating as well. So we don't have to look at cookie cutter per se, but a way to go ahead and template and do that information. That kind of the onboarding and adoption of using Ortelius to manage your services. Because you basically, we're going to go and ask them everything that we need. And then once they hit okay, that we go off in the back end and generate all the gory details that the DevOps folks have to set up manually. We can do it through these templating engines automatically. Does that make sense? It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it seems cool.
Yeah, it helps with the number of clicks to get something set up. Now, like the one with Backstage, they'll do their templating seems pretty extensive because they will actually do things all the way out to the cluster level. So if you want to say I want a fast API, I want to deploy it to Kubernetes, and I want to have a stack driver plus Prometheus plus some Kiali going on for monitoring, that you can pick all that in the template and it'll take care. And I'm going to be using GitHub and Jenkins. It'll go through and piece together these predefined pipelines so that you can deploy Hello World, your new Fast API application out to your cluster within a couple of minutes instead of waiting days for folks to set everything up. So that's the concept behind it, being able to onboard new services really quickly and kind of hands-free type of mode. And I think cookie cutter, we can do it with that. I think I have to look at their templating library, and like I said, we'll probably need to have multiple templates being used to get what we want as an end result. So think about that one. We need to do some investigation on that. So what is it? Tracy's idea that and the other folks that she was working with, does that make sense from kind of like the navigation side of things as a next direction?
Yeah, it simply helps because we have lots of version. If you have lots of version going on for application, better to get it dragged it from the inside the application from the base version to select which version you are interested in. So it will help to simplify more things.
Yeah, I think it'll help a lot too, and I think it'll make it easier to navigate instead of jumping back and forth.
Right, and what we can do is that, like for the time being, what we can do is that if we have the applications present, instead of showing that on the main application page, inside the base version we can show them as a drag down, and in that case we can select the which one someone wants to see, and then we can reload the complete page for that in that case.
Yep.
So that would be more simpler to do, like from implementation.
Yeah, and I think from a coding perspective on the JavaScript, so Bassam, just to let you know, our front end is written in JavaScript. There is no framework library. That it's not like a React or a Vue or anything like that. So it's pure jQuery with a bunch of JavaScript. It's
Okay.
not the prettiest thing in the world, but it gets us through.
Okay. Sure.
So the guys that originally wrote it were not UI guys. So
Okay. But he's still there, or the guy? Or not?
no, I've taken it over, so I know
Okay.
how to navigate it and what
Good.
needs to be updated. But it's one of those that I think the changes aren't going to be that bad to move stuff around to make that happen.
Sure.
But if you're interested, I can help set you up and get you going.
Yeah.
We actually use for our monolith, we use Eclipse as the editor.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something that you use?
Yes. I use IntelliJ or Eclipse. Both are available for me.
Okay.
But yeah, I see in the page, in the guidelines, there is like a guide to set up Eclipse and environment in Eclipse, I think.
Yep, that was there. Let me, if you go through that and you get hung up anywhere, let me know, because there may be some little things that we need to tweak in the documentation to clarify stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
All right, everybody, we ran over a little bit. Thank you so much. Some great ideas. Thank you, Karam, for that timestamp. I'm going to add that in.
Yeah, so like I've added some changes
capturing
as
that.
well. Yeah, so I've added some commits to that,
Thank-
like some changes to that. I've pinged that in Discord as well, so you can refer that.
Awesome.
So it provides two types of time: author date and committer date. So currently the script, so the command you use, it is using %80. So for commit date, you use CT.
Okay. And what's so if you're going to measure the time a developer makes a change to the time that it was deployed, which one would you use, the author date or the commit date? What's the difference?
Not sure, but I guess like in case of PR, that we can observe through a PR. So like if you're doing a direct commit, that like if like in my current organization, I use a direct commit. So like in that case, I got the same thing. But like when I'm going for a PR, we should check it out once.
Okay.
Like if the commit ID changes, then definitely I guess, or we can have a look at it once, like on a repo.
Yeah, because I think when you do the PR, you're going to get a new commit hash on the merge. So I guess it would be when the PR was authored, probably then.
I would have to look into it as well. I'm not sure about authored commit and commit.
Right. Either way, we have something to show. I'll add that in. So where that's going to be added in is we have a Python library that fits into the CI, like into Jenkins, into the CI process. And that Python library is the one that kind of gathers all the information from the build. So when the build happens, we can gather, the git commit, the GitHub URL, the Docker SHA, the Docker digest, all those things are gathered by that Python library at build time. So we'll modify that to go ahead and grab the commit timestamp as part of that. I have to see what other requirements we need, if we need to gather anything else. I think that may be the only thing that we're missing to start doing these calculations of things. All right, cool. Thank you again. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so what I found right now, that the author date is basically when you made the first commit, and commit date is when every time the commit is being modified. So like rebasing it and on another branch, something like that.
Okay. All right, we'll probably do the first one, because what we want to show is how old when a developer actually made the change and when that change got actually deployed to an environment. So kind of like when they started working on things, even though they actually start coding before the commit, but it gives you at least a point in time to reference when, yeah, because you could, a person could work on an issue for or make a coding change that takes a month, and then they make the commit, and then the commit goes out to production in 2 hours. It's not exact science, but it's one of those that'll give us a little bit better time. All right, cool. Thank you.
No issues.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Till there.